right? I want to know from a brain standpoint, I can be the greatest sports psychologist in the world and want to change patterns. But if the brain is not healthy enough, it's going to be an uphill battle, correct?
That's right. The brain can get jammed up by all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And some of it's physical stuff, like trauma. And some of it's just negative thinking because you don't want to disappoint dad or your wife or whatever. And yeah, so it gets jammed up by a lot of different things.
Right. So I'm fascinated with, if I'm looking at creating better software programs for someone, here's better thinking patterns, emotional responses, state management, okay? I want somebody to be in the optimal state when they hit that golf ball or when they hit that serve, okay? That optimal state, I think of it as software, right? Here's the program I'm going to run. Yet some people can't run that program because there might be a virus in the program. There might be too many browsers open in the computer, or the hardware is just not optimal. So I'm fascinated with the brain health, the brain of how it can be optimized, the hardware to make the software run cleanly without any glitches.
I look at it kind of the other way, the other direction. Software is there, so the hardware is making the software work better, but to some extent, the software is simply telling the hardware what it wants it to do. So let's say, for instance, hypofrontality in a flow state.
Correct.
So we can see that with an EEG. That means the actual brain is actually doing that. It's not just a state that, oh, I feel everything's coming together and there's no sense of time and I feel happy and that's perfect. And it's not just a state. I mean, the brain is actually different.
Correct.
So then you have this question of, how do I get into that state? And you know, Csikszentmihalyi had like 15 different ways to get into that state. But we can also train it. We have trainers that will show you your EEG and you can train it and we'll reward you when you get there, and then you can just do it when you want to. So there are at least maybe 20 different ways, but there are at least 2 different ways to get into that state. One is by driving the physical brain, teaching it how, because the brain's self-aware. So you teach the brain how to do something, it knows how to do it. Anything the brain does more than twice, it learns how to do it more efficiently. So if you teach the brain on purpose how to get into this state or that state, whether it's situational awareness or hypervigilance or the flow state, whatever state it is, the brain knows how to get there faster. So then it makes the software work better.
Right.
So it's both of these things that we can train both of them. And then you get this synergistic kind of...
Well, and that's the key word, synergistic. Like, it's like the chicken or the egg. It's like, am I training the soft skills or the software that makes the hardware get better, or am I training the hardware that makes the software get better, right? And we would agree it's both.
Why not do both?
Right. And so that's what has always fascinated with me about flow state, is we do know that there is brainwaves that go with it, neurochemicals that go with it, that it's an actual state that is measured along with, wow, I'm performing great. I'm in the flow, right? So that was always a key element for me back in the day when I first went back to school, back then it was called the zone, right?
That's right.
And back there, the professors would say, well, we don't really look at it too much because we're not quite sure how to train it. It just kind of happens. I didn't like that answer. Just happens. So I believe it's trainable. And I've been looking at more of, in flow code, we call them flow triggers, right? Our ability to trigger the present moment, our ability to do that it could be through thoughts, it could be through deep embodiment, I can use my body, I can use breath, because flow follows focus. Our only way to get into a flow state is to be in the present moment. So we start with that we train towards, but somebody says, yeah, but I get distracted all the time. It's hard for me to hold attention, right? Now, I might want to train them in a certain thing, but what I'm learning from you and Calm Waves is that, wait a second, we can do an assessment of their attention.
Mm-hmm.
We can now start training separately attention, which then makes my job as a coach easier to go, great. We're going to bring that attention here for 30 seconds. We're going to take you from here to here. And now the brain is more plastic, right? It's neuroplasticity has been able to do that now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what intrigues me, is that I want to work it from both angles. I don't know your side as well as I'd like.
Well, we 30 years been training the brain from my side
You're right.
and your
Right.
side. My doctor's in psychology, and I'm licensed as a therapist, and just not with your population. My population would be the third grader with ADHD, or the housewife with anxiety, or the whatever. Same kinds of things that your population needs to work through and overcome.
Exactly.
So we probably did a lot of the same things through the years. But I learned a long time ago, then let's play with the hardware. Let's figure out how to do that. So back 30 years ago, the zone was with traditional neurofeedback. We're going to put sensors at top dead center over the sensory motor strip. We're going to train the person. We're going to reward the person when they make 12 hertz brainwaves, which was the original way that neurobiofeedback ever started, was with cats, training them to make 12 hertz brainwaves. That's how it all started. And that's sort of what the brain does in that zone. It's right here, you're making a burst of 12 hertz. So you can reward that and teach people to do that. But then you get guys like Csikszentmihalyi or Debbie Cruz at Arizona State, or whoever, and whoever teaches downhill skiing, and they're going, oh, wait a minute. Actually, we turned this off.
Correct.
This hypofrontality, where most of us are living in this hyperfrontality, where we're talking all the time, and me playing golf, all this stuff. So the hypofrontality, you can measure that too. And how do we get that into the flow state? How do we get that to turn off so that time is meaningless, the function is effortless, and no matter what's going on around you, it's not a distraction. The guy who's here, who gets paid money to do this, he doesn't care if they're banging stuff in the stands or whatever, because his world is small. It's just this, and there's no talk in his head at all.
Right.
So can we train that? So the world's kind of shifted now toward, well, let's just train hypofrontality, flow.
Exactly.
Let's just figure out how to get flow in here. And that's all measurable. It's all trainable. So does it come from the software? Of course it does. Does it come from the hardware? Yeah, because it actually changes the way the brain's working. So neuroplasticity is learning how to shape, because the brain both will create new neural pathways that are like freeways. I mean, it just builds it. But also it has old pathways that you don't use, and it prunes them. It's like the rose bush. Are you sure you want to do that? Yep. Boom. And off it goes, because next year it's the way you want it. So the brain is always pruning stuff. That's why I don't remember my third grade teacher. I don't know.
Right.
Not important. My brain went, it's only a 3-pound brain. It can't carry a whole bunch of stuff. So off it goes. And yet we can shape it and mold it through this idea of neuroplasticity to be the kind of machine we want it to be. It's kind of a weird thought that we can build the kind of brain we want to have. If we want it to be happy and focused and clever and whatever, we can build that. And the brain is self-aware enough that it'll say, oh, that's what you want? Okay, let's work on this. But you also have to do exercises to make it do that. Right. Otherwise we get bitter and grumpy and whatever brains, because we tend to carry bitterness and unforgiveness, whatever. So it shapes the brain to be really good at that.
Right.
So we can make the brain, both the software can drive the molding of the actual tissue
Mm-hmm.
of the brain
Mm-hmm.
to function differently. So how do you describe that? I mean, I don't know anything else in nature that is like the brain, that it's self-aware. We have this consciousness that either is or isn't within the brain, and nobody can explain that. That's why they have to hedge. It's like, who knows? You know,
Right.
where is consciousness? Well, I don't know. and they interconnect in such a way that it actually physically changes the structure of the brain. So, I mean, I can't think bicep, get bigger, and make it bigger, but that's how it works with the brain, that we can over and over and over again create new neural pathways that we want,
Right.
and get rid of the ones we don't want. And it's a physical thing. Like I heard once that about that big, so there's a gap between my fingers. That's how much a brain cell will grow when we learn something new in a fraction of a second. Boom. And each neuron is connected to like 5,000 other neurons. So just boom, we learn something new. The brain changes at speed of light, speed of electricity.
Right.
It's growing. We can do that. So man, this is the most fascinating, it's the most fascinating creation in the universe, is the brain.
Right.
It's really something. So we can train the hardware to work better, like tuning up a car.
Mm-hmm.
We can change blood flow in the brain so that it has access to more oxygenated blood so it can function better, like we can put better gasoline into the brain.
Right.
And then we can teach the driver how to drive the machine.
Mm.